everybody on Instagram, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. I'm really sorry for the delay. I'm on country internet, and when I tried to go live on Facebook and Instagram, it didn't let me. So I finished up my Facebook Live, and I am going to redo it all for you on Instagram so that you get all the information around vigorous intensity exercise during pregnancy. My name is Christina Previtt. I am lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. I am also a Canadian, and so I am going to thank you all and wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, Jeff. This is because you're the best. I didn't tell him to tell me that, I swear. And so I wanted to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and I wanted to just kind of come on here first and say how thankful I am for the ICE community and for Jeff and Alan for running this podcast and for you all to listening to me rap on about various topics in the geriatrics and pregnancy and postpartum space. So I'm going to start with a thank you. The second thing I'm going to tell you all who are listening on live is that I am home today doing this podcast because we have a long weekend. So if you see multiple cats coming on in the background, that's because I have a lot of animals around my house, and that is just the nature of my life. So in regards to pregnancy and postpartum, we are an 8-week online course that is taught with myself, Kelsey Valentine, who is an internal pelvic floor physical therapist, and Alexis Morgan, who is our teaching assistant for the course. And if you guys are interested in jumping in on that course, our next cohort starts January 11th. All right, let's get into the bread and butter of our podcast for today. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about today was around vigorous intensity exercise during pregnancy, specifically during the third trimester. What has happened over the last several years is that we have seen a huge switch in regards to the messaging to our pregnant women regarding exercise. And we know, and I've talked about this big pendulum swing where we have had the recommendations being extremely conservative and saying, we should rest during this time. Your body is going through a lot of stress, and it's probably best for you to stay conservative and just walk or just go about your daily tasks and not really take part in structured exercise. The pendulum has now swung, and what we are realizing, and more research is supporting, is that individual that's super exciting that Alexis was in that Herman Wallace course. That's really great. She's amazing. And so what the pendulum is swinging across is showing that, exercise for individuals who are experiencing an uncomplicated pregnancy is healthy and beneficial. Even if you weren't exercising before getting pregnant, it is okay to start an exercise program. We probably sticking to more low impact exercise in that moderate intensity range. And now the recommendation is for a lot of women to continue exercising at least at a moderate intensity throughout their pregnancy for as long as possible. And of course, there's going to be things that are going to come up, or women are going to have different motivations throughout their pregnancy, and that is okay. But right now, it is currently recommended, and it's good for mom, for baby, reducing risk of chronic conditions like preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, and gestational diabetes, and good health outcomes for mom and baby. So what about what happens when women want to perform vigorous intensity exercise? What if you have a woman who is like, I really enjoy CrossFit. I don't want to hold back on the Metcon. I just want to give her. I feel really good about it, and you can't stop me. We do not have a lot of research around vigorous intensity exercise. And what happens with a lot of our medical diagnoses is that if we don't have any research, we err on the side of conservative until we have literature that tells us otherwise. And that's really important because we do not want to be making recommendations to women who are pregnant that could potentially be unsafe or lead to negative health outcomes to mom or baby. And therefore, a lot of these research studies, I'm going to tell you, like the ins and outs of studying women who are pregnant can be really challenging because you do not want to be the researcher that is introducing a paradigm that creates late miscarriage or negative health outcomes or anything to that regard. And therefore, there isn't a ton of research that is looking at pushing the envelope when it comes to exercise during pregnancy. And so in 2020, a couple of months ago, there was a cross-sectional study that was done that basically started to look at this question. And so when we're thinking about safety, before we're thinking about effectiveness, safety has to be established. And what safety would mean in regards to pregnancy would be that there is no sharp increases or decreases in fetal weight, that health outcomes, women are not there. Sometimes we're looking at labor and delivery outcomes. So things like need for emergency C-section, rates of instrumented or vacuum assisted vaginal deliveries, or just general complications with the health of the newborn for women who are going through different exercise paradigms. And I think that's important for us to establish first. And so that's what this cross-sectional study tried to do. So it took individuals who were admittedly on their own and not through a randomized protocol, who were exercising at a vigorous intensity during their third trimester, and followed them into labor and delivery and compared with a group of women who were not exercising at all during their third trimester. And what they showed was really interesting. So what they showed was that there was no difference in maternal weight gain between women who were not exercising and women who were exercising at vigorous intensity. This outcome is important. Probably surprising that there was no difference between women who are vigorously exercising and not. The important outcome that they were looking for, though, is that we need women to be having a certain amount of weight gain during pregnancy. And the thought process sometimes is that maybe if we're exercising too intensely, women aren't gaining the amount of weight that they need to support the pregnancy. And this study showed that that was not the case. What they also showed was no too high birth rate, so fetal macrosomy or lower birth weight for women's babies who are born who are vigorously exercising versus not. And what we know is fetal macrosomy, so babies that are born that are too large, can actually have some negative health consequences. So the risk just goes up. We're looking at risk profiles here. And so that was indifferent. There was no adverse events reported for women who are vigorously exercising in regards to maternal health outcomes or fetal health outcomes, both of which are extremely important. And the other thing was that there was no adverse events to the fetus. So healthy babies were born in both groups. The only statistically significant difference was that women who are vigorously exercising were pregnant for 0.2 weeks longer than women who are not. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're 40 weeks pregnant or you're overdue, I bet you do not want to be pregnant for an extra day. And so it was definitely something that was statistically significant. So that was the only statistically significant difference. And so this is a very preliminary study. This is the first of its kind, but what it is showing me is that the way that we are communicating to moms around exercise is going to be extremely important. Going directly to fear and that we need to, it's not safe for you to do vigorous intensity exercise is probably not appropriate. The recommendation against vigorous intensity exercise was based on a small study of elite level athletes who were placed on a vigorous intensity stress protocol on a treadmill. And they were looking at fetal heart rate and fetal abnormalities. And there was some instances where there was some changes in fetal heart rate towards a too low heart rhythm. And that was why the recommendation against vigorous intensity exercise was given. And what that might show is that, that may not be something that is a negative outcome if it's transient in nature. And it's just something that we need to explore a little bit more. So this study is showing that, we have that one research study. It's very small and we still have a lot of work to do, but we may not have to create as much fear around vigorous intensity exercise as we have in the past. That being said, one of the things that I would consider is having a conversation with my client around their why for vigorous intensity exercise. We don't have a ton of research on this outside of this cross-sectional study. And so usually our recommendations is to try and stay in the moderate intensity range. If you have an athlete who is really pushing back against that, I would have a conversation around their why. Is it because they just legitimately really enjoy getting into that heart rate zone and it makes them feel good and empowered? Then that is great. But you are going to see some athletes who are doing this or going into those vigorous intensity states to try and push back against the loss of identity that they might be feeling as athletes who are now in this pregnant period of their life, where for the last 20 years, 30 years, however many years of their life, their athleticism has been a big forerunner in a lot of the decisions that they're making in regards to health. And when you're pregnant, it takes a step back, and that athlete brain has to go to the back burner a little bit more. And that can be a really hard thing for some athletes to work through and process. And that might be why they are pushing back or resisting against those recommendations. And so that might be a great time to have a conversation with them around, periods in your life and that you're not going to lose your athleticism, and give examples of really amazing women who are in the prime of their athletic career after having children, like around like Cara Saunders, who was just at the CrossFit Games and performing really well 16 months after her daughter was born. And so having those conversations can be really great. It can also sometimes open up conversations around potential disordered eating and require a referral. In pregnancy, the weight gain for some individuals who have been very strict with their nutrition can be extremely challenging. And sometimes the use of exercise can be one of their coping mechanisms to try and combat or work through some of those feelings. And again, that might be another conversation that we're going to be having with our clients. Some may just enjoy it or accidentally get their heart rate too high. And I don't want my client to be afraid if all of a sudden their heart rate goes above 140 beats per minute. And so I think those types of conversations are going to be really important. But our knee-jerk reaction shouldn't be that we need to completely scare our pregnant clients that they're going to be somehow harming their unborn little one if their heart rate goes too high, or they enjoy this vigorous activity and it's coming from a well-informed and mentally sound place. And so those are just some of the recommendations that we're starting to see. And I'm hoping that we're going to be seeing more and more research coming out in this space to try and give us a bit more information around what our recommendations should be and how we can help empower women who are interested in exercising in any capacity: yoga, walking, CrossFit, weightlifting, powerlifting, and making sure that they're staying safe and feeling good about those decisions. All right, that is our podcast for today. If you are in Canada, I'm wishing you again a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you get to spend some socially distanced probably time with your family. You're outside or through virtual. I hope you get the chance to connect with your loved ones. And this is my big thank you to the ICE community for allowing me to get onto this podcast and rap about new research in the pregnancy and postpartum space. Have a wonderful Monday, everyone, and I will see you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.